Welcome to our Glendale City Council workshop. This meeting is for council members to review and discuss important issues, projects, and future council meeting agenda items. It's a work-study session only and allows the council to hear input from city staff. No action will be taken at this workshop, and there will not be an opportunity for public comment. This meeting is streaming live on Glendale's Facebook and YouTube pages and the city's cable television station, Glendale Channel 11. Thank you for joining us.
And good afternoon. Welcome to Glendale City Council Workshop Session of February 11th, 2025. This meeting is called to order. Mr. Melner, are you on the phone right at the moment?
I am.
Okay, very good. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and conduct a roll call. We'll start off with Councilmember Baldenegra.
Here.
Councilmember Conchas.
Here.
Councilmember Guzman.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Melner.
Present.
Okay, Councilmember Turner, I don't know if he's coming in or not, but we'll find out here shortly. Vice Mayor?
Here.
And the Chairman, I'm here. With that, we are going to switch number one and number two. We'll be taking two first and then number one. So with that, Ms. Bauer.
2024 Glendale Resident Survey.
Mayor, members of the council, here to provide staff report on item number one is our Director of Organizational Performance, Jenny Durda.
Thank you, Mr. Phelps. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So I'm going to discuss our 2024 resident survey. I'll be providing some background on how the survey was conducted. I'll be sharing a selection of the survey results and then discussing the next steps of how the survey results will be utilized by departments. We worked again with Polco, our survey company, to conduct the survey for our residents, and they provided the analysis that I will be sharing with you today. The survey was conducted between July 15th and October 21st, and there were two different participation options. There was an invite-only portion and an open participation portion. In the invite-only portion, we randomly sampled households within Glendale, and we sent invitations to 9,500 households in the form of a postcard. Of those, 402 households completed the survey, which is a 5% response rate. For the open participation portion of the survey, we put up some billboards, took out some ads in newspapers. Some of your council newsletters, you were kind enough to include an invitation to take this survey, and we had 369 households participate in that survey. This year, unlike last year, we had a completely custom survey. We asked departments what were questions that they wanted to ask the residents and get their feedback on. The focus of the survey was around community services needs of housing, human, and public services. They have a requirement to survey residents as part of their 5-year plan, and so we use this as an opportunity to support that need. There were also some questions about communication and how we provide information to the residents. If you want more details on the questions, you have the full report, and the survey instrument is the very last section of that report. Before we start going into the slides themselves, I wanted to show you some of the Likert scales that were used to survey people. The third Likert scale down is the one that most of the things I'm going to share with you show. And you'll see that the categories of very important and moderately important are the ones that are used to give the category. Additionally, the first three charts you're going to see here were presented to you by Community Services on 210 as the survey was primarily focused on their needs. So this first slide shows that when residents were asking the two most important priorities of all that were listed in the surveys, respondents ranked the housing and homelessness at the top of the list. About 6 out of 10 respondents considered these issues as a high priority to the city, with second, economic development at 34%, infrastructure improvements, human and public services at 28, neighborhood improvements at 27, and community and public facilities at 19. These are the top 5 items from the section of the survey around the importance of housing services. Glendale residents were asked to assess the importance of supporting 10 different categories of housing services, for people with low or moderate incomes. All 10 services were deemed moderately or very important by at least half of our residents. I'm not going to read every single slide and all the charts for you. That would take a long time. So housing types on the next slide. These are the top 5 housing types selected by those who responded to the survey as very important or moderately important for Glendale to have more of. So we can see that that first one is housing for survivors of domestic violence at 81% of respondents saying that was very important or moderately important. The next slide is around economic development. You can see the top 5 areas that residents rated as very important or moderately important, with a retention of existing businesses coming in at 87%. Next, we have the top 5 items for important infrastructure improvement activities, with street and road improvements at 90%, water, sewer, and solid waste systems at 89%, and storm sewer at 87%. Next, we have respondents who were asked to rate how important it was for Glendale to invest in public services, and heat relief topped that list at 87%. Next, we have the areas of human services. You can see that investing in services for survivors of domestic violence led the way at 84%, followed closely by veterans at 83%. We have 6 areas of neighborhood improvement that residents were asked about how they rated them in importance, with organized neighborhood cleanup leading the way at 82%. Respondents were also asked to rate the importance of 9 community public facility options. Parks and recreation centers were considered the most important, followed by healthcare facilities, with about 8 and 10 respondents rating those as moderately or very important. So there were 6 key findings that came out of the report. Living wages and housing are the greatest challenges that our residents feel they face. Housing services for people with low or moderate incomes are considered important by at least 2/3 of our residents. Organized neighborhood cleanup would be the most important for neighborhood improvement. Road improvement and water sewer system improvements are considered the most important in terms of infrastructure. Retention of existing businesses was the most important area for economic development. And across all areas, homelessness topped the agenda. So the next steps with this survey are to take this feedback to the departments, and they will integrate it into their strategic plans, their Tier 2 balanced scorecards, as was done with last year's survey. Departments will establish specific initiatives where necessary to address these concerns, perspectives, and the needs of our residents. And then where necessary, departments will provide council with information, results, or request direction. Now, as per council direction, we will be conducting the national survey, a community survey again this year. And then in 2026, we will have another custom survey. And then in 2027, we'll do a 3rd national community survey, which will be able to benchmark across all 3 survey years. That concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Question?
Yeah, I had a question,
Go ahead.
Mayor. I understand that the survey was sent out to all of the districts, right?
Correct.
Are we able to find out which districts responded the most?
Yes, if you, Mayor, council member, if you go to a section in the report in the very back where it says survey methods, it's on page 137 of the report. It shows how different households were sampled. And then on the very last page of that section, 139, it shows the percentages of districts, both weighted and unweighted. The results of the report are weighted to show each, to represent each district proportionally.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, Mayor, I do. So the number of residents that completed the survey was 771.
With both the open and the closed participation.
So is
Mayor
that-
and council member, yes, with both open and closed participation.
Thank you. So is that a typical response? Is that a low response? Is that a high? I don't think it's a high response, but what is typical for people to respond to this type, especially a custom survey that's custom for the community?
Mayor and council member, it is an appropriate and normal response for this type of survey, and it was enough to be statistically valid at a 95% confidence interval, which is what you strive for in surveying.
Okay, thank you. So my next question is, what do we do with this? I mean, okay, we have this information, we have an idea of what's important to residents, and one of the things I wanted to, it was a close second in the neighborhood concerns was stabilizing and improve vacant buildings, and I know that's something we were at one time getting a report on vacancies around the city because I know storefronts and you know, buildings in general, retail buildings are somewhat going away. But that's how, you know, you lose an anchor tenant, then you start losing other tenants, and then pretty soon you've got a half vacant or more plaza and basically, you know, in and around a neighborhood, and that's how blight begins also. So what do we do with this information to make Glendale a better place?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, every single department has been provided a copy of this report, and each individual section, we pulled out for them things that were relevant to the services they provide in their department. And they will be taking that information and seeing how it aligns with their strategic plans that are currently in place, assessing the gaps between what residents said were important and what is listed in their current strategic plans, and making adjustments as appropriate.
So thank you for that. Will we have an opportunity, Mayor, if I could continue to understand what actions are being taken to address the concerns that, because I mean, surveys are great, but what matters is what happens then? You know, what kind of action is taken to address the concerns and make it a better community? So will there be reporting back to us on you know, what's taking place to address some of these concerns?
Mayor, members of the council, there's a lot of information in the survey, and as Jenny said, we'll be taking it back and working with departments. During the budget process, there'll be opportunities for the departments to share with you initiatives and things that they're doing through their budget or their performance measures to affect these numbers. So that's one way that you'll get information. And then again, other specific workshops. This specific survey was designed much around community services. We already had a workshop that is helping inform their 5-year action plan based on this information. And so you'll be hearing back periodically from Kimberly Hall about what the initiatives they're doing via their staff and also through the CDAC as to how they're incorporating this and how they're using this information to drive their strategies and initiatives as well. Because a lot of this is community services.
Right. So thank you. For me, anyway, it would be helpful when we talk about that, when they're going through their budget presentation, if they could connect it to pieces in the survey, you know, what they're addressing, that would be helpful for me. I don't know about anybody else. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mayor?
Go ahead.
Thank you very much for the findings of the survey. And the key findings, it says when asked to prioritize across all areas, housing and homelessness top the agenda. This is relevant in terms of my conversation I had with the local pastor, Perry, over at St. John's Lutheran Church, who is helping to provide services. And so I look forward to these key findings going into our budgeting process. And I know that Pastor Perry is advocating for case management assistance. And I look forward to working with the council and with the city manager's office to find ways that we can help the direct service providers in our faith communities in the Cactus District and across Glendale. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you.
2025 Water Services 5-year forecast and services rate review.
Mayor, members of the council, here to provide staff report on item number 2 today will be Ron Serio, our Director of Water Services, and he'll be assisted by Levi Gibson, our Budget and Finance Director.
Microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Phelps. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Today, Levi and I will be discussing the Water Services financial forecast, the 5-year forecast, and the results of the rate study that was just recently conducted. Today, we have with us Mr. Justin Razor. He's with Raftellus, and he was led the study for us, our rate study. So if there's any questions I can't answer, we'll have him answer those. And this is an information and consensus item, so we will be asking for consensus on an item. Okay. Okay, so this is a slide that was previously presented back in October to Council. And it's just a reminder. I just wanted to remind everybody what's driving the need for a rate increase. And essentially, we've experienced pretty significant inflationary impacts. And we also have some new water resources needs that we need to fund that are coming into the future. This slide, it shows that our actual O&M costs from fiscal year 22 through 24 went up 34%. Our construction costs increased 38%, and our actual revenue only went up 8.5%. And if you look at the gap there, there's over 25% increase that we would need just to catch up to inflation. So keep that in mind when we get to the rate slide. I'll discuss that again. The other drivers is our capital program, and Water Services has a lot of infrastructure. Glendale has invested in our infrastructure. We have 3 water treatment plants, 2 wastewater treatment plants, a partnership plant with Schrog. We have 1,100 miles of pipe for our water distribution system, and some of that pipe dates back to the 40s and 50s. It's that old. Our sewer pipe, we have 700 miles of sewer pipe, and that even is pre-1940 that some of that was installed. It's important that we assess this infrastructure and keep it in good condition. And the reason it's important, because that's the most cost-effective way to manage these systems. The pictures are just some examples. We do have breaks that occur in water lines, and that happens not too often, but it happens pretty frequently. So that shows a water main break, and that's an example of reactive or emergency repairs that we would have to do. And the other stuff that comes out of like our assessments, if you look at the bottom picture, this is a clarifier at the Choya water treatment plant. And our assessment showed that, you know, the bottom left picture, the coatings failed, and water was getting through the coatings and rusting the steel structure of this piece of equipment. So if we didn't address it, it would eventually rot away, and then we would pay a whole lot more money to replace that. So we went in, sandblasted it, recoated it, and we'll get another 20, 25 years out of life out of this piece of equipment. With respect to our total CIP budget, the things I just mentioned are what we typically do, and that's what's included in that first line. And it's pretty steady in the $60 to $70 million range. This also includes short-term drought mitigation measures, which are groundwater wells. We're in the process of constructing 2 new wells now. They're not completed. And we added 2 additional wells into our budget because we need them to make sure we're prepared for the short-term drought. The other things we're addressing, the second line is the water resources, and that's the long-term water resources. This includes raising Bartlett dams so we have more water available in the salt river system, and also advanced water purification. And if you add this up, it's a little over 40 million in the first 5 years, but the bigger costs are in the second 5 years when these get constructed. And these are 10+ year projects to get operational. And then finally, we have advanced metering infrastructure. And that is something we presented to council. We're in the selection process, and we'll bring that back. And that's automatically reading our meters. So that we're expecting to cost about $30 million to implement. But over the life of the 15-year life of the meter, we expect that to kind of pay for itself. So that's kind of a summary of our capital program.
And with that, we'll move into our forecast assumptions for water and sewer. One of the main drivers, obviously, of water and sewer is revenue based on user charges. We've assumed that there'll be for our account growth, we're moving from a 1% increase in account growth to a 0.5% increase in account growth. And that's driven by, as the city has built out. Additionally, over the last few years, we've seen demand slightly declining in water. That's driven both on conservation and changes in buildings as people replace dryer washers and replace refrigerators and toilets. Those things are now more efficient in how they use water, and so our demand has dropped slightly. For our expense assumptions, we have assumed an average increase in our expenses for year one of about 10%, and then we've changed that to 5% for the subsequent years. As you can see from Ron's portion of the presentation related to capital, we have significant capital investments within our 10-year capital improvement plan. Within the first 5 years, we have improvements of about $398 million. And that is partially financed through debt issuances, and we have assumed $273 million in bond sales over the first 5 years. Now, this slide shows our 5-year forecast with those revenue and expense assumptions, as mentioned on a previous slide. Additionally, this includes the previously approved council rate increases that were approved about 3 or 4 years ago. And as you can see, within the 5 years, under these current assumptions, at no point does water and sewer meet its council fund balance policy, and shows that in its current state, this is not a sustainable system, as we're not making the appropriate investments into this system. And with that, I'll turn the presentation over to Ron.
Go to the next slide. So just to state what the objectives of the rate study is, one is to be just and reasonable, and this may seem very obvious, but this is a statute requirement in Arizona. And what it really means is that we're not over or undercharging any class of our customers. So each class of our customers should pay the right amount, not too little, not too much, that they're paying their fair share and they're not subsidizing another customer class. It also provides revenue stability to help with our 5-year forecast. And our goal is to maintain financial targets, and we have a few of them which we'll discuss, and encourage conservation. And encouraging conservation means our rates are set up for lower users. They pay a lower rate per gallon of water, and the high users pay a higher rate per gallon of water to encourage them to use less water. Okay, there are 3 targets that we look at. One, Levi discussed, it's the fund balance, 50% of O&M expenses. The other one is the days of cash on hand that we have so that we can cover our operating expenses. And we're looking for something in the range of 180 to 250 days. And then the final one is a requirement of our debt covenants, and it's something that they require us to have a debt service coverage that's between 1.2 and 1.8. And the intent of that is to make sure that we're not over borrowing money. We limit the amount of money that we borrow so that we can be financially stable. And the purpose of these is to maintain a good credit rating and get good interest rates on the bonds or money that we borrow. So it's just to save us money in the long run. Okay, so the proposed rates, just to give a little bit of information on this slide. So first, this is a scenario for our single-family residential customer that uses 9,000 gallons a month on average. And just to put that in perspective, you could fill up a bathtub about 128 times with that much water. So it's a lot of water. And in terms of our residents, or Glendale's actual customers, 67% or 2/3 of our customers use an average of 9,000 gallons a month or less. And if you look at about half of our customers use between 6,000 and 7,000 gallons a month on average. So the average customer will see a slightly lower impact than what we're seeing up here. The two options, so option 1A includes the previously approved rate increase that goes into effect January of 26, and option 2 takes that out. And what is being proposed is that these proposed rates would be effective in October of 25, so we can keep the rate increase 3 months later or skip it and wait 15 months till the next rate increase. And the difference is when you increase the rates a little bit more upfront, they're a little bit lower in the future. So you can see that as you go down, it's a little bit lower. And then when you look at the impact of the cost of these, it may look like a lot in a month, but if you put that into perspective, I mean, it's equivalent to maybe 2 or 3 gallons of gas. It's equivalent to maybe a Big Mac meal, or maybe 1.5 dozen eggs. It's inflation has been pretty impactful.
Not anymore.
All right. And then wanted to talk about how we rate, how Glendale rates with our benchmark cities from a benchmarking standpoint. And basically, Glendale is right in the middle of the pack. And this is as our rates exist today. If you add the first October rate increase, we'll still stay in the same position. We're not really moving position. And to help put this into a little bit of perspective, if you were to buy 9,000 gallons of water at a quarter vending machine, which is really cheap way to get water, that would cost $2,250. Well, for less than 10% of that cost, you're getting 9,000 gallons of water delivered to your house. You're getting sewer service, which means everything you put down the drain, flush down the toilet, we're treating it to Class A standards and reusing it. You're getting your trash picked up every week. You're getting your recyclables picked up every week, street sweeping. So you count all those things. It's really a good deal for all the services that are provided.
Now, this next slide here reflects the recommended rate increases. We've done this on one slide. The goal of the rate increases is to have the water and sewer fund meet its fund balance target by year 5. So as you look through this slide, you'll notice that in the first 5 years, the current year and then the next 4, the fund balance is slightly below. But by the year 2930, with the proposed rate increases, independent of which option, the water and sewer fund will be solvent and meet its fund balance target.
Okay, so the other thing that we looked at was implementing a stormwater management fee. And just a little bit of background on that. The stormwater management program, it is a regulatory requirement. Glendale, we have a permit that we have to adhere to. It requires all kinds of things. We have to inspect facilities, inspect catch basins on the street, inspect pipes, clean all those things. There's sampling of the water, there's quality requirements, there's analysis, there's reporting. There's a lot to it. And the intent of this program is to get stormwater that flows into the street, off of the street, and into either retention basins and dry wells, or get it into Skunk Creek or the Agua Fria channel, just to get it off of the road so they're safe. In order to accomplish this, it takes several departments. So engineering is involved, parks is involved, transportation is involved, solid waste, and water services. So between those departments, there's 2 different main funds that are used. We got the general fund that is paying for maintenance of retention basins and channels and washes, and capital improvements that are necessary. The enterprise funds are paying to inspect and clean the stormwater pipes, catch basins, outfalls, dry wells, and also the street sweeping. So that's what the program does. Many other cities have had stormwater fees for quite some time, not just in Arizona, but across the country. So we're kind of late to look at considering implementing a stormwater fee. So we looked at what other cities are charging, and Peoria's charging $1.50 a month. Tempe is at $3 a month. Scottsdale's at a little over $8 a month. And then Phoenix, they charge per meter size. So the smallest meter is 95 cents and it goes up to over $40. And each city covers different items in their fees. So that's kind of how it would rate. So the benefits of having a stormwater management fee, as we just seen in the survey that Jenny just presented, with respect to infrastructure, stormwater or storm sewer system improvement and flood drainage improvements ranked in the 80s in terms of how the respondents in Glendale felt how important that was to invest in this infrastructure. So those respondents felt it was important to invest in this infrastructure. The other benefits is right now we don't really have a dedicated funding source for this regulatory requirement. So implementing this fee would provide us a funding source. And the things that go along with that is it would provide a better ability to track what we're actually spending to meet the needs of the stormwater program. So as we start gathering actual costs, then in the future, if we wanted to allocate more costs to that fee, we have the data and the information to do that. The other thing, Water Services did an integrated master plan a few years back, and the results of that recommended having a stormwater fee. And currently, there's a performance audit that is underway. And a couple of weeks ago, I did see the draft audit findings, and it also recommends implementing or considering implementing a stormwater fee. So for all of these reasons, our staff recommendation is we feel that we need to implement this fee, and we think it makes a lot of sense to do that. So what is being proposed is a fee of $3 per account per month, and then looking at inflationary increases as we move out through the 5-year planning period. That $3 would raise about $2.3 million per year, and what we would initially fund with it is $400K would go to parks, and they're currently, they're using a contractor to clean up Skunk Creek for stormwater reasons, and they also are cleaning retention basins after rain events. So they're spending money on it now that's coming out of the general fund. So by implementing this fee, we could reallocate $400,000 in general fund to other higher priority general fund needs. The other remaining portion would go to the sewer fund because the sewer fund is currently funding the inspection and of the storm drain, of the all the stuff in the street, I guess. All the stuff in the catch basins, that's what I'm trying to say, sorry about that. So the catch basins, the stormwater pipes, and we actually go out and clean those as well. So the impact of this to the rate, we're not just taking this $3 and adding it onto what was proposed. If you go to the next slide, Levi, what it shows is that we're actually reducing the amount of the sewer increase that we need because the stormwater fee is offsetting some of those costs. So what we have here on the left side of the table is option 1A that you've seen above. It's exactly the same without the stormwater fee, and that's the option that includes the January of 26 fee being implemented. And then what we added on the right side is incorporating stormwater into that. So you can see the first year, the sewer rate goes from 7.4 down to 2.7%. So we're reducing that and implementing the $3 fee. So what this shows similarly is with the stormwater fee being implemented, we're collecting a little bit more money up front, and in the out years, the increase is a little bit less. And then option 2, where we just don't have the January 26 rate increase. The rate increases are a little bit higher, but it's the same thing. We're reducing the amount of sewer fee increase that we need because it's being offset by the stormwater fee. So with that, we are asking for consensus on which of these 4 options council would like us to move forward to the public outreach phase of this process. And just to be clear, we're not asking you, you're not voting on a rate, you're not implementing a rate. That vote would come, we're expecting in June. So we're just asking, which of these options do you want us to move forward into the public outreach phase?
Thank you, Mayor. I think for me, the option B makes the most sense. The only concern is does it get us where we need to be? Big picture, because I didn't add the columns up. But I don't know what the total impact is going to be between the two. I can do the math real quickly, but I guess I would want to know that if option B is still going to get us where we want to be with fund balance.
Mayor, Vice Mayor Tomachoff, yes, all 4 of these options meet the same 5-year forecast, the second one that Levi talked about. So it meets all of those financial targets. So when you add them up, they're not going to add up to be the same. They're going to be a little bit different, but it meets that forecast.
So thank you for that, Mayor, if I could. So the stormwater, option B, including the stormwater assessment, is that what's on slide 15? Is that included in that slide?
Mayor, Councilmember, or Vice Mayor Tomachoff, yes, it is. So,
Okay.
So again, all 4 of the options, this was the constant, and then we adjusted the rate so that it matched this, the 5-year forecast. That's how we designed the 4 different rate options.
I think for me, option B makes the most sense. Thank you.
Mr. Phelps?
Yeah, and I think what want to clarify that, Councilmember Tomachoff, is there's option 1 and 2, and then within each option 1 and 2, there's an A and B. So, for example, if you went with option 1 and option B, the total amount of savings after 5 years, the rate's going to be about 17.5% less than what it would be if you went with another option. So you can really kind of do it a couple different ways. You can go to option 2 and do do option B. So you need to look at it as really 4 different kind of independent things you can mix and match.
Mayor, if I could then, so the rate increase would be the impact showing, let's just say on option 2A, the 755 plus the amount showing on, got to find the right page here. Do we add those together to get the rate increase, or it's built into these charts that we're looking at?
It's built into the chart.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mayor, members of the council, sorry, I'm anticipating a question, but to Kevin's point about the 4 different options, the first decision is, do you want to do a rate increase in October and then again in January, or do you want to do a higher rate increase in October, skip January, and come back the following January? So that's really the difference between option 1 and option 2 is...
Why don't we do that one first?
That's what I'm suggesting. Maybe we talk that one through first, and then we talk through
Okay.
within that, do you want to do the stormwater fee,
So
yes or no?
With that said, actually, before we go there, you've been trying to talk.
Thank you, Mayor, and I
Let's
guess
do that first, and then we'll do that.
we're all getting over to the same page pretty quickly here. I do believe that the proposal to do the stormwater fee and to aggregate the stormwater expenses into one location for tracking and auditing and all those purposes is a good idea. So that means I'm in favor of option B of either of the two. And then as far as option 1 or 2, I don't really want to hit our ratepayers with a rate increase in October of 25 and then turn around and hit them again in January of 26. So that means I'm in favor of option 2B.
Mayor?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with Councilmember Turner. I think we should go, I myself will support the option 2 with option B.
Mayor, I agree with that too, and I think it's similar to what we did with solid waste. We decided rather than doing, and it becomes confusing for the customers in their billing, we combined the first two, because one, I think it was lowering the fuel surcharge. Anyway, we combined it all into one rate adjustment, and rather than doing one and then another one right away. So I agree, option 2, and then the
B.
storm drain. Yes, I'm trying to find the page, but I can't find it right now.
Okay.
Anyone?
21.
21.
Mayor, I agree with Councilmember Turner. Option
Two Bravo.
2B. 2 Bravo, if you want to say that.
Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Council. I just wanted to get on my soapbox and say that I didn't run for City Council to raise fees on our residents, but I agree with the council in terms of option 2B for the public to weigh in on. Thank you.
Mr. Milner?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with option 2B.
Okay, that was done. Next.
Mayor, I do have a question
Go ahead.
though. So we're adopting a 5-year rate plan? Is that, we're adopting all of these increases? I mean, we will be adopting a 5-year rate increase, or I know there's been some conversation where, and I've actually voted against a rate increase before, because I think committing to 5 years for rates, because the variables of our operating cost, our cost of capital, with the uncertainty about tariffs and things that may be related to our capital costs for infrastructure that we're doing, and the cost of water, I would like to see we adopt a 5-year rate plan, and then maybe adopt the first 2 years of rates and then revisit it and see, so we don't commit to residents, these are your rates, and then we come back later and say, oh, it's not high enough, we're gonna need more. So I don't know where we're going with this, but I'd just like to clarify that if I could, please.
Mayor, members of the council, I think the intent is to adopt the 5 years. Part of the reason for that is because in these first couple of years, we aren't meeting some of our metrics. That's very important to the bond rating agencies. So for them to be able to see, okay, you're not meeting some of your metrics on the front end, but your plan and your adopted rates will meet them by the 5th year, is important for us to maintain our bond rating the way that it is. We can always revisit them as we go. We look at them all the time. We look at revenues, we look at expenses. This was somewhat of an unprecedented period of very high inflation. No one could really have anticipated. But if something of that nature happens again, yes, we'd have to be back. But in the meantime, we'd have the 5 years solidified, which would help us keep our bond rating steady and sort of secure that that revenue stream over that course of those 5 years.
Mayor, if I could, so what was 2022 the last time we had a rate adjustment for water?
Mayor, Vice Mayor Tomachoff, 21, the council voted, and it was effective in January of 22, yes.
Okay, so
we've implemented 4 of the 5. The 5th one is the one that's January of 26, so we got through 4 of the 5 years.
Okay, thank you. And so does it make a difference with whether we say we're adopting the plan, but we're committing to the first 2 years, 3 years, these are the rates, that we actually calendar that we're gonna come back and look at it again? Because there's so many variables. That's why I've hesitated before with a 5-year plan, because I've actually had residents say, "What you said this is what the rates are going to be, and now you're changing it." So I guess it's 6 of one and half a dozen of another. But committing to the rates for 5 years it's kind of unrealistic in the environment that we're in right now with the economy.
Mayor, members of council, I think what staff is trying to say is this. If you go back to the CIP plan that was presented earlier, we're just a little bit under $250 million of debt that we'll be issuing debt on for the CIP. Bond raters, when we go to sell our debt, are going to look at what our adopted rate forecast is. Yes, you could do it 2 years. that doesn't give them the assurance, because we're going to show them at 2 years, which is all we can guarantee them, that we're below our stated fund balance policies. So you may see a different rating, and when you're doing $250 million, even 25 basis points, 50 basis points can have a significant impact on the amount of interest charge that, essentially, bonds don't have interest, but essentially the effective interest rate of a bond can be very measurable. So our recommendation is to establish a 5-year plan. We can continue to revisit it every other year and make sure that it's still meeting the target and the goals. It doesn't mean it can't go down if we're exceeding our revenue projections. And you can also at that time make further adjustments upward if it's not meeting. But this really is for the credit that we'll be issuing on our CIP, is to maximize the best credit rating and the best interest rate by having an adopted 5-year plan that gets us to our stated fund balance policy goals that are in our system.
So, Mayor, if I could, I agree with the 5-year plan, and but to adopting the actual rates for the full 5 years, is there a difference as far as the bond rating?
Mayor, members of the council, yes. The surety that those rates have been adopted is very important.
Okay, thank you.
Who else? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Before we move off of this presentation, there's a couple of questions I had. On slide number 6, you did touch on the advanced metering program that we'll be doing, and we'll be investing about $30 million over the course of 4 years in that. It has a lifespan of 15, and you mentioned that as far as the city budget in the long run, it's about a wash. We'll be saving money as it's implemented. And I just wanted to point out that, yeah, for the city as a whole, it's a wash, but that advanced metering system has the ability to be a real benefit to a large number of individual residents that might have a water leak and either would have a high water bill, or worse yet, they would have significant water damage if they had an interior leak while they were out of town or something like that. So it's us getting into the future, but it's in the long run, it's something that could be beneficial to just any number of our residents, and allow us at the same time citywide to save water and prevent leaks like that too. So I just wanted to reinforce what it's a good idea, even if it sounds like it's a wash, to use a water term. And then the other question I had is on slide number 7. You talked about the number of our accounts generally have been increasing by 1% a year, but we're predicting in the future they'll only be increasing by 0.5% a year. And that's the gross number of our water accounts, right? And these rates that we're doing are based on accounts, but I know that our population growth now is more in multifamily than in single family. So do those multifamily units, are they a single meter or a few meters for the whole complex? And should we not be adjusting the rates for them on a per unit basis, a per housing unit basis, rather than a meter basis?
Mayor, Councilmember Turner, we are looking at apartments and in terms of what rate they should be paying. Charging them individually is difficult because, like you said, it's a big commercial development, and we don't have individual meters to each apartment. So we typically look at what the cost of services to serve them, and then make sure the rate is appropriate, that it's just and fair to collect what it's actually costing us, that the rate reflects that accurately.
Okay, so I would suggest that might be something that we could look at a little more, how we're going to do that. So like, let's take into, for example, the wastewater fee, the stormwater fee that, we're going to be initiating. Well, that benefits every resident, I think, more or less equally. And so therefore, if an apartment complex has 1 meter but 200 family units, then perhaps that complex ought to pay 200 family units worth of water, stormwater fee, and then they spread that out among all of their residents, by recouping it in their rent cost, as opposed to undercounting the multifamily households and having the rest of the single-family households carry a bigger burden than they should. That's my suggestion to, consider, and if it hasn't been tossed aside already.
Mayor, members of the council, we can work with the rate study firm and take a look at that for you.
Thank you.
What else do you need?
Okay, almost done. So next, I just wanted to talk about the urban irrigation.
There we go.
Okay, so basically, urban irrigation is flood irrigation in the downtown area, and some of the lots in the highlighted yellow area that are shown on the map, not all of them, can receive flood irrigation or urban irrigation. And it's basically untreated water that comes down the canal and ditches and pipes from the Salt River Project system. The rates are set by council policy, so it's a prescriptive way that the rates are calculated. And basically what it says is that the actual cost of that service, the city pays half of it, the ratepayer pays half of it, the user of that. And basically, depending on the number of customers, the number of customers has been decreasing in the last several years. I would go back 7 years ago, there was over 300 customers. Today, we're in the mid 270s. So the lower customers we get, the higher the rate goes. Last time we looked at changing the rate was back in 2019, and new rates went into effect in 2020 and 21, and they've been the same since then. And if we go to the next slide, we see what the impact is. So, so the rate has been $328.34, and that is an annual rate every year for 15 waterings for that year. And if you look down the second row from the bottom, it shows what our recovery rate has been, and it's been in the 40s. So we're not meeting the 50% recovery per council policy. So what we're proposing is to fix that rate, and rather than doing it all in 1 year, we want to split it up into 2 different years so it gradually is increased. So if you look at the second column from the right, April of 26, the proposed rate, because that's when the watering season starts, would be $399 per year, and then the following year would go up to $485 a year. And next steps, after this and through April, we'll be conducting public outreach efforts. We'll be going back to our Citizens Utility Advisory Committee. We'll be back in April to adopt a notice of intent and set a public hearing date. And then in June is when the public hearing is conducted and the formal vote on the rate adjustments will take place with an effective date for the new rates in October of 25 if they're approved. And that concludes our presentation.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
As you might predict, I might have something to say about the urban irrigation. And it begins with the concept of touch points. Everybody in our community has different places that they come in contact with the city and the services we provide. And, obviously some residents couldn't care less about urban irrigation, just like some residents don't utilize our libraries or our parks or our regional parks or our special events or any of that. So, but different residents have different touch points. And I know for the residents that subscribe to our urban irrigation system, it's a very important thing to them. And it's the way in which, and the reason our recovery rate was established at 50% is because there's also a benefit to the community for urban irrigation, and that it keeps the big trees in the downtown alive, which, has a cooling effect. It has the, cleansing the air effect. It has an effect on creating the historic and traditional environment in our neighborhoods, keeping property values in this area up, lots of different reasons that there's a wider benefit than just the 1 yard that gets water. And I'm not necessarily proposing a solution at this point, but it's something that I think we need to be in front of and can't ignore much longer, because we're on the verge of probably going into a death spiral on irrigation customers if we don't find some way to manage the cost differently, better. I'm not saying we're doing a bad job. I'm just saying we have to find some way to manage this cost, because a lot of the users of irrigation are elderly, fixed incomes, and those sorts of things. They not only get the water benefit, but they also get the benefit of having a city contractor do the turn on and turn offs, so they don't have to get up in the middle of the night to go out and turn on their valve for, 37 minutes or whatever the schedule might be between 2 and 3 in the morning. So it's kind of a complex situation. I think it's a sensitive touch point for the residents that subscribe to it and that live in the area that benefits from it. I think we need to put on our thinking caps and figure out how are we going to address this, in a more secure fashion going forward, and what options there might be. Thank you.
You have what you need?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Well, I think that's all we got, isn't it? City manager's report?
Yes, Mayor, members of council, here's this week's edition of the city manager report. Hello, everyone. Let's take a quick look at some of the great things happening this month in Glendale. The Downtown Glendale Arts and Culture Fest was a huge success. We had entertainment for all ages. Highlights included live music, a classic car show, local art, and a barbecue contest. Guests also watched artists paint murals in real time. A shout out to our economic development team and the Southern Arizona Arts and Culture Alliance for putting together such a fun community event. Glendale is showing cities around the world how we use data to serve our neighbors. Our team welcomed city leaders from Brazil and South Carolina for the What Works Cities Exchange program. We showed them how we're using data to tackle challenges and improve policies. The group toured the innovative System of Care campus, as well as our nationally recognized real-time crime center. During the exchange, our visitors gave presentations on important data lessons that they've learned and how they apply data to improve their community. City staff walked away inspired and ready to do even more. Recently, our employees joined a county-wide effort to gather information about homelessness. 70 volunteers from Glendale helped with the annual point-in-time homelessness count. They visited alleys, parks, riverbeds, and other areas to count the number of people without shelter. The data collected will help shape policies to benefit our community. We'll have the final numbers later this spring. Speaking of helping those in need, Glendale's doing its part to find stable housing for struggling veterans. Thank you to the mayor and council for attending the Veterans Village groundbreaking. A who's who of statewide leaders joined us in this event and underscored the importance of this innovative project. When completed, the lot near 63rd and Grand Avenue will have 50 tiny homes for veterans who are facing homelessness. Equally important, these veterans will also get support services to help them transition to permanent homes. This project is possible thanks to a partnership between the city, Maricopa County, the state of Arizona, and the not-for-profit Veterans Community Project. I hope that gave you some insight into the important things happening in our city. I'll be back with more updates soon.
Okay. City attorney's report.
Nothing today, thank you.
Council items of special interest. Councilmember Baldenegro, have you any?
No, sir.
Councilmember Conchas, have you any?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'm requesting a council item of special interest to examine the impacts of fireworks in Glendale and explore legal pathways to implement a citywide ban. I have spoken to the city attorney and deputy city manager about this issue. As we know, fireworks create a significant strain on fire and police departments, contribute to air and water pollution, negatively impact residents with PTSD, veterans, and families with young children. While Glendale enforces restrictions, state law prevents us from fully regulating fireworks sales and usage. I'm requesting that staff conduct a thorough review, including fire safety and resource allocation, assessing fire-related incidents and emergency response costs, environmental and public health impacts, evaluating air quality, water contamination, and mental health effects. And finally, the most important is legal and policy analysis. I would like the city to explore the feasibility of a charter amendment to ban fireworks and the sale and possession, and the potential for litigation to assert local control. I asked the staff provide a full report with recommendations on how we can move forward, including public engagement and data-driven solutions. It's time to protect our community from the dangers and disruptions caused by fireworks. Thank you.
Councilmember Guzman.
No, Mayor.
Councilmember Melner.
Nothing today, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Turner.
Not today, Mayor.
Vice Mayor.
Yes, Mayor, I do have one. As everyone knows, ADOT's currently working on a widening project for the 101 loop between 51st Avenue. Actually, it's from I-17 to 75th Avenue, but the Glendale stretch is from 51st Avenue to 75th Avenue. And enhanced artwork on freeways is a local obligation. I've asked about artwork that it wasn't initially included in the project. So I'd like to ask staff to present to the council a discussion to whether or not to enhance artwork along the Loop 101 as it has been done along other freeways in the area. Given the status of the current construction, it's already underway, and understanding that art options costs have been identified by MAG, I would like to ask staff to present this at the next available workshop. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. I haven't anything to add. Can I get a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, vote aye.
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 Any opposed, vote nay. Ayes have it, do have it. So it goes.
Oh.
I realized it's hard for a lot of families.